The forest was never meant to be crossed at night. Everyone in the small mountain village knew that. The elders had warned about it for generations. They said the forest had its own rules after sunset, rules that humans rarely understood and often paid for with their lives. But that night, Elena had no choice. A cold wind whispered through the towering pine trees as Elena walked slowly along the narrow dirt path that cut through the forest. Her breathing was heavy, and one hand rested protectively over her round belly. She was 7 months pregnant. Every step felt harder than the last, but she kept moving. The moon hung high in the sky, casting pale silver light through the thick branches. Shadows stretched across the ground like long fingers reaching out of the darkness. Elena's heart pounded in her chest. Behind her, somewhere deep in the forest, a branch snapped. She froze. For a moment, she told herself it was only the wind. But then she heard footsteps. Heavy. Slow. Following her. Fear tightened in her chest. She tried to walk faster, but her body wouldn't allow it. Please, she whispered softly to herself, just a little farther. The nearest village was still miles away. Her husband had died months ago in a terrible accident at the sawmill. Since then, life had become harder with every passing day. The landlord had thrown her out of the small house she once shared with her husband when she couldn't pay the rent. She had nowhere left to go. But she had heard that her aunt lived in a village beyond the forest. It was her last hope. Another branch snapped. Closer this time. Elena turned slowly. The forest behind her was thick with fog and darkness. For a moment she saw nothing. Then a shape moved between the trees. A man stepped out of the shadows. He was tall and broad, wearing a dark coat and a crooked smile that made Elena's stomach twist with fear. Well, the man said slowly. What do we have here? Elena's heart sank. She didn't know him, but something about him felt wrong. His eyes were cold, and the way he looked at her made her skin crawl. I'm just passing through, she said nervously. The man chuckled. Passing through? Alone? In the forest? At night? His eyes moved to her belly. And pregnant. Elena instinctively stepped back. I don't want any trouble, she said. But the man stepped closer. Oh, I'm sure you don't. The wind picked up, rustling the trees. The forest suddenly felt darker, quieter. Too quiet. Where are you going? The man asked. My aunt's village, Elena replied, trying to keep her voice steady. The man smiled again, but it wasn't a friendly smile. That's a long walk, he said. Elena said nothing. Then the man stepped closer again. So, maybe you have something valuable on you? Her heart raced. I don't have anything, she said quickly. The man tilted his head. Oh, I doubt that. Elena's hands trembled. She looked around desperately, but the forest offered no help. Just trees. Fog. Darkness. And the man standing between her and the path forward. Please, she said quietly. I just want to go. But the man's smile faded. Instead, his eyes hardened. I think you should stay a while. He grabbed her arm. Elena gasped. Let go of me. She struggled, but the man was far stronger. Relax, he growled. You shouldn't wander alone in places like this. Elena tried to pull away, panic flooding her body. Please. I'm pregnant. The man didn't seem to care. Instead, he tightened his grip. The forest seemed to hold its breath. And then, a low growl echoed through the darkness. Deep. Powerful. Animal. The man froze. Elena stopped struggling. The growl came again. Closer this time. The sound vibrated through the trees like thunder. From the darkness between the pines, 2 glowing eyes appeared. Golden. Watching. The man slowly turned. What the hell? The bushes rustled. And then it stepped into the moonlight. A massive black wolf. It was larger than any wolf Elena had ever seen. Its fur was dark as midnight, and its eyes burned like molten gold. The creature moved silently, its muscles rippling beneath thick fur. The man released Elena's arm. Back, he shouted at the wolf. But the wolf didn't move away. Instead, it stepped closer. Its growl grew louder. Lower. More dangerous. Elena's heart pounded wildly, but strangely, she didn't feel fear toward the animal. The wolf's gaze flicked toward her for a brief moment. And something strange passed between them. Not anger. Not hunger. Protection. The wolf stepped forward again, placing itself directly between Elena and the man. The message was clear. The man laughed nervously. It's just a wolf. But his voice trembled. The wolf bared its teeth. Long. Sharp. Deadly. The growl turned into a warning snarl. The man picked up a large stick from the ground. Get back, he shouted. The wolf didn't retreat. Instead, it lunged forward. The attack was so fast that the man barely had time to react. The wolf slammed into him, knocking him to the ground. The stick flew out of his hands. He screamed as the wolf snarled inches from his face. Elena, he shouted desperately. Call it off. But Elena stood frozen. The wolf wasn't attacking blindly. It was holding the man down. Pinning him. Warning him. The man's fear was obvious now. Get this thing away from me. The wolf growled again, louder than before. Its teeth flashed in the moonlight. The man slowly raised his hands. All right. All right. The wolf stepped back slightly but didn't take its eyes off him. The message was clear. Leave. Now. The man scrambled to his feet. He backed away quickly. You're lucky, he muttered angrily. But he didn't come closer again. Instead, he turned and ran into the darkness. The forest swallowed him within seconds. Silence returned. Elena's legs gave out, and she sank to the ground, breathing heavily. Her heart was still racing. The wolf turned toward her. For a moment, they simply stared at each other. Elena expected the wolf to leave. Or worse. But it didn't. Instead, it walked slowly toward her. Her breath caught. The massive creature stopped a few feet away. Close enough for her to see every detail. The thick black fur. The powerful body. The glowing golden eyes. But there was something else in those eyes. Something calm. Something ancient. Elena placed a trembling hand over her belly. It's okay, she whispered softly. The wolf tilted its head slightly. Then, slowly, it sat down beside her. As if standing guard. The wind moved gently through the trees again. And for the first time that night, Elena didn't feel completely alone. But deep in the forest, other eyes were watching. And the night was far from over. The forest was quiet again. Too quiet. Elena sat on the cold ground, her back against the rough bark of an old pine tree. Her breathing had finally begun to slow, but the fear in her chest had not completely faded. Beside her, the giant black wolf remained still. It hadn't left. The animal sat like a silent guardian, its golden eyes scanning the forest. Every few seconds its ears twitched, listening to sounds Elena couldn't hear. The moonlight fell across its dark fur, making it look almost unreal. Elena watched it carefully. Why are you helping me? She whispered. Of course, the wolf did not answer. But strangely, she didn't feel afraid of it anymore. When it had attacked the man earlier, there had been rage in its movement, but not the kind of rage that comes from cruelty. It felt protective. Almost like the wolf understood. Elena slowly pushed herself to her feet, wincing slightly as her body ached from exhaustion. I have to keep going, she said softly, mostly to herself. The path to her aunt's village was still long. If she stayed in the forest too long, the cold alone could become dangerous. She took a cautious step forward. The wolf stood up immediately. For a moment Elena froze again. But the animal didn't growl or threaten her. Instead, it simply walked ahead of her on the path. As if leading the way. Elena blinked in surprise. You're coming with me? The wolf continued walking. Slow. Calm. Occasionally glancing back to make sure she was following. Elena hesitated only a moment before continuing. The forest stretched endlessly around them. Tall pines swayed gently in the wind, and the fog drifted like ghosts between the trees. Their footsteps were the only sound. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Elena's legs grew heavier with each step. Her hand stayed on her belly. Just a little longer, she murmured to the baby. Suddenly, the wolf stopped. Its body stiffened. Its ears rose sharply. Elena noticed immediately. "What is it?" The wolf growled. "Low. Dangerous." Elena's stomach tightened. Then she heard it. Voices. In the distance. Men. More than one. And then. A familiar voice. That woman couldn't have gone far. Elena's blood ran cold. It was him. The man from earlier. But this time, he wasn't alone. "I'm telling you," the man continued angrily, "there was a huge wolf with her." Another voice laughed. "You're afraid of one wolf? That thing was massive." "Relax," a third man said. "We brought rifles." Elena's heart began pounding wildly. The wolf slowly stepped back toward her. Its golden eyes burned with warning. "They're hunting," Elena whispered. She suddenly understood. The man had returned. With help. And weapons. Her legs trembled. "I can't run," she said quietly. The wolf looked at her. For a brief moment, something strange happened again, like an unspoken understanding passing between them. Then the wolf turned. And moved off the path into the forest. It looked back. Waiting. Elena realized what it meant. Hide. She followed as quickly as she could. Branches scratched her arms as they moved deeper between the trees. The fog grew thicker here, making it harder to see. The wolf guided her to a fallen tree. Beneath its large roots was a natural hollow. A small space just big enough for her to crouch inside. The wolf nudged the opening gently. Elena understood. "You want me to hide here?" The wolf stared at her. Distant voices grew louder. They must be nearby. Elena's heart raced. "Okay," she whispered. She carefully lowered herself into the hollow space, her belly making it difficult. The wolf used its nose to push loose branches and leaves partly over the opening. Camouflage. Then it stepped away. Elena grabbed its fur for a moment. "Wait." The wolf paused. "Don't get hurt," she whispered. The animal held her gaze for a moment longer. Then it disappeared into the fog. Moments later, the men arrived. Elena held her breath. 3 figures moved through the forest. The cruel man from earlier led them. The other 2 carried rifles. "I swear they came this way," he muttered. One of the men shone a flashlight across the trees. The beam passed dangerously close to Elena's hiding place. She pressed a hand over her mouth to keep from making a sound. The man cursed. "This stupid forest." Then, a growl echoed from deeper in the woods. The men froze. "There it is," one of them whispered. The wolf stepped out from the shadows. It stood tall on a rocky ledge. Moonlight illuminated its massive form. The men stared in shock. "Holy! That thing is huge," another man said. The cruel man pointed angrily. "That's the beast." One of the hunters raised his rifle. The wolf didn't run. Instead, it growled again. Louder. Stronger. The sound rolled through the forest like thunder. "Shoot it," the cruel man shouted. The gun fired. The shot echoed across the trees. But the wolf had already moved. It leaped from the rock and disappeared into the darkness. After it, the man yelled. The hunters rushed deeper into the forest. Their flashlights vanished among the trees. Silence returned again. Elena stayed hidden. Minutes passed. Then more minutes. Her heart still pounded violently. Suddenly, another gunshot echoed far away. Then another. Elena's eyes filled with fear. "Please," she whispered. She didn't know why she cared so much. Maybe because the wolf had saved her life. Maybe because it was the only thing standing between her and the men. The forest remained silent. Then, footsteps approached again. Elena froze. But this time, a familiar shape appeared. The black wolf stepped out of the fog. Alive. Unhurt. Relief flooded through Elena so suddenly she almost cried. "You're okay," she whispered. The wolf approached the fallen tree. It nudged the branches aside. Elena slowly crawled out of the hiding place. Her legs trembled. "You tricked them," she said softly. The wolf had led the hunters away. protected her again. But the wolf didn't relax. Its ears remained alert. Its gaze shifted toward the darkness. Because somewhere in the forest, the hunters were still searching. And this time, they were angry. The forest darkened even further as heavy clouds rolled across the moon. The fog thickened, wrapping around every tree like a living shroud. The scent of wet earth and pine filled Elena's nose, mixing with the sharp tang of fear. Her legs were shaking, not only from exhaustion, but from a growing sense of danger she could not yet see. The black wolf stood beside her, massive and still, its golden eyes scanning the shadows. Every muscle in its body was coiled, like a spring ready to strike. Elena could feel the power radiating from it. It was as if the forest itself had chosen this creature to guard her. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the fog in stark white for a brief second. Then came the thunder, a deep, rolling growl that seemed to shake the ground beneath them. "Storm, too?" Elena whispered. "Why tonight? Why now?" The wolf didn't answer. But its presence was a comfort. Somehow, she knew it would not abandon her, not while the danger was near. A sudden crack of a branch to their left made her gasp. The wolf's ears flicked, its body stiffening immediately. From the fog, shadows began to emerge, more than before. The cruel man was back, and this time he was not alone. 2 others had joined him, armed not only with rifles but with knives. The wolf growled low, a warning rumble that reverberated through the trees. The men froze. "She's here," the cruel man shouted, pointing toward Elena. "I can feel it." Elena pressed her back against a tree, clutching her belly. Her pulse raced, her mind screaming for her to run, but her body refused. She was too heavy, too slow, and the forest was disorienting under the storm's shadow. The wolf moved in front of her, body tense, eyes locked on the men. It was more than a guardian, it was a weapon. One of the hunters raised his rifle, aiming directly at the wolf. The cruel man shouted, "Shoot! Don't let that monster get away." The wolf leaped. Its movement was impossible to track. In a blur of black fur, it knocked the rifle from the man's hands before he could fire. A flash of teeth grazed the man's arm, and he stumbled backward with a scream. Elena's heart pounded. She had never seen an animal move with such precision, such force. It was like watching a shadow strike lightning. Another hunter swung a knife at the wolf, but the creature dodged with uncanny speed, snapping its jaws at the attacker's wrist. Blood spattered the dark forest floor, staining the fallen leaves and fog. The wolf was relentless, not out of anger, but necessity, protecting the life of the woman behind it. Lightning struck a nearby tree, sending a shower of sparks across the path. The thunder crashed immediately after, deafening and violent. The hunters flinched, giving the wolf an opening. It lunged at the cruel man, knocking him to the ground with terrifying force. He screamed, thrashing wildly, but the wolf pinned him with a paw that could have crushed a human chest. "Elena," the cruel man screamed, panic overtaking his rage. "Help! Please! I'm telling you, I'll give you money." Elena wanted to look away, to close her eyes, but she couldn't. She watched as the wolf's golden eyes bore into the man, unyielding, unrelenting. The warning was clear: leave. Or die. The other hunters tried to attack again, but the storm worked in the wolf's favor. Rain began to fall, thick and cold, soaking the forest. Mud turned the ground slick, slowing their steps. Thunder rolled overhead like the roar of giants. The wolf moved like a shadow among shadows, striking, dodging, and forcing the attackers backward with every move. It was no longer just a battle, it was a symphony of survival, a deadly dance where one wrong step could mean death. Elena's breath came in ragged gasps. She wanted to help, but she was helpless. All she could do was clutch her belly, whisper prayers, and watch. Then, in the midst of the chaos, a twig snapped behind her. She froze, her body rigid. Another man? Or one of the original hunters returning? Before she could react, a figure lunged toward her from the shadows. Instinctively, the wolf spun around, striking with precision. Teeth clamped down on the attacker's shoulder, and the man collapsed with a scream. The wolf turned immediately, shaking its head, snarling at anyone who dared approach. Elena stumbled backward, heart hammering. "Thank you," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Lightning struck again, closer this time. The sudden flash revealed the wolf's form, massive and majestic, standing as the last line of defense between her and death. Its fur was soaked and matted with rain, but its eyes burned brighter than ever. The storm intensified. Rain pelted down, drenching both Elena and the wolf. Thunder and lightning clashed with the sounds of the fight. Mud and blood mixed into the forest floor, making every movement a struggle for both man and beast. Despite the chaos, the wolf never faltered. Every attack was precise, calculated, almost human in its intelligence. Elena realized something astonishing. The wolf wasn't just protecting her, it understood her. It knew what was at stake. It knew her life was in its paws. Hours seemed to pass in the relentless storm, though in reality, it was only minutes. The cruel man and his companions were wounded, exhausted, and disoriented. The wolf had driven them back repeatedly, and now they began to retreat, grumbling and cursing under the pouring rain. The cruel man fell to his knees in the mud, clutching his bleeding arm. He glared at the wolf, his eyes filled with hatred and disbelief. "This isn't over," he spat. The wolf did not move. Its growl lingered, low and dangerous, as if promising vengeance to anyone who dared come near Elena again. Then, slowly, it stepped back, watching the men stumble away into the dark forest. Elena sank to the ground, soaked, trembling, and utterly exhausted. She reached out a hand to the wolf. "You saved me," she whispered. The wolf came closer, its massive head lowering until its golden eyes met hers. For the first time that night, Elena felt a connection that transcended words. She felt understood, protected, and not alone. The storm raged on, but somehow, in that moment, the world felt quiet between the two of them. "You stayed," Elena said softly. "You didn't leave me." The wolf sat beside her, rain dripping from its fur. It didn't need to respond. Its presence was enough. But deep in the forest, beyond the reach of lightning and thunder, other eyes watched. The men had not gone far, and they would not forget. Elena knew that the night was far from over. The wolf had saved her, for now. But the forest held many dangers, and the storm was only beginning. And somewhere, deep in the heart of the trees, another secret waited. The black wolf was not just a guardian, it was a protector of something far older and more powerful than the forest itself. And tonight, Elena was now part of that story. Her journey was far from over. And the storm was far from finished. The storm had begun to ebb, leaving the forest dripping and cold. Rainwater ran down Elena's hair and soaked her clothes, but her body was still shaking, not from the cold, but from the memory of the night's attacks. Her legs ached, her heart raced, and her belly throbbed with the tiny, yet unmistakable life inside her. Beside her, the black wolf remained watchful. Its golden eyes seemed to burn brighter now, reflecting not just moonlight, but an intelligence Elena could not fully comprehend. "You're not just a wolf, are you?" she whispered. Her voice trembled. "You're something else. Something more." The wolf did not answer. But it stood and slowly walked to the edge of a clearing. Its movements were deliberate, almost ceremonial. Elena followed, wincing with every step, afraid she might stumble. As they entered the clearing, a strange light shimmered between the trees. Pale and ethereal, it seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Elena blinked, unsure if her eyes were playing tricks on her. Then the wolf stopped. Its eyes fixed on the center of the clearing. Elena froze. There, emerging from the fog, was a faint shape, a spirit, or perhaps an echo of the forest itself. It shimmered like water in the moonlight, taking the vague form of a massive wolf, larger and more majestic than the one standing before her. The black wolf let out a low growl, not threatening, but reverent. Elena's breath caught in her throat. What is this?" The wolf moved closer to the vision, its fur bristling. Then, as if acknowledging her presence, it stepped aside and gestured, its head lowered slightly, toward the apparition. The figure of light shifted, its eyes, like the wolf's, glowing with ancient knowledge. Elena felt a strange warmth wash over her. A sense of history, of protection, of something older than humans themselves. "You are not alone," she whispered. The wolf barked softly, a sound that somehow carried reassurance. Elena realized something then. This wolf was no ordinary creature. It was a guardian, an ancient being entrusted with protecting those who could not protect themselves. And now, it had chosen her. But the peace was short-lived. From the trees came the sound of snapping branches. Elena's stomach tightened, fear shooting through her body like electricity. They're back. The cruel man. He had returned, alone this time, but his eyes burned with a hatred that made Elena's blood run cold. He held a long hunting knife in one hand, a rifle slung across his shoulder. His figure was wet and muddy from the storm, but he didn't care. Nothing could stop him, not the forest, not the storm, not even the wolf. "You think you can hide from me," he shouted. "I will have what's mine." The wolf stepped forward, placing itself squarely between Elena and the man. Its fur was slick with rain, its eyes like molten gold. It did not growl at first. Instead, it stood perfectly still, exuding a calm so deep it was terrifying. The man laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "A wolf won't save you this time, little lady. Not tonight." But the wolf did not move. Lightning split the sky above them. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Then, with a sudden, fluid motion, the wolf lunged. It was faster than the eye could follow. The man barely raised his knife before the wolf's massive paw struck him, sending him sprawling into the mud. He scrambled to his feet, coughing and spitting, rage and fear twisting his features. Elena wanted to cry, wanted to scream, but she forced herself to stay silent. The wolf's eyes met hers briefly. "Protect me. Stay still. Don't move." The man tried to aim his rifle, but the wolf had anticipated every motion. It leapt onto a fallen tree, then sprang forward with terrifying grace, knocking the rifle aside with a swipe of its paw. The man stumbled, losing his balance and sliding down a muddy slope. Elena watched, her pulse pounding, as the wolf circled him, its eyes unblinking, its every movement precise. Then it paused, head tilted, ears alert. The man's eyes widened in fear. "No, no. You can't." But it was already too late. The wolf did not strike to kill, it was not a creature of mindless violence. Instead, it struck with power enough to incapacitate. The man fell to the ground, clutching his ribs, groaning in pain. The wolf growled, a sound that shook the forest and seemed to echo through the very trees. Elena stepped forward, her hand trembling. "Please, leave. Don't come near me again." The wolf backed away slightly, giving her space. Its gaze never left the man. The cruel man, finally realizing the fight was lost, scrambled to his feet and ran into the darkness, cursing. His knife and rifle lay abandoned in the mud. Elena sank to her knees, tears mixing with the rain. She looked at the wolf, who now sat down in front of her, calm and unthreatening. "You saved me," she whispered. "Saved my baby." The wolf barked softly, almost as if acknowledging her gratitude. For a moment, the forest was quiet. The storm had passed. The clouds had begun to part, revealing a pale moon that bathed the forest in silver light. Then, from the corner of her eye, Elena noticed movement. Small figures, pale and shimmering, appeared among the trees. Ghostly, ethereal shapes that seemed tied to the forest itself. They circled the black wolf, bowing their heads as if paying homage. Elena understood, then, that she was in the presence of something ancient. Something sacred. This forest had guardians, and the black wolf was its chosen protector. She reached out and gently touched the wolf's fur. It shivered slightly under her hand, a soft exhalation escaping its muzzle. Will it always be with me?" she asked. The wolf's eyes met hers, golden and unwavering. No words, but a promise. Elena realized she could now trust the creature with her life. And more importantly, with the life of the child she carried. The cruel man would not bother her again. Not tonight. Not ever, if the wolf had anything to say about it. The forest whispered around them, leaves rustling softly in the night breeze. Elena rose to her feet, feeling a newfound strength. She wasn't alone. She had a guardian. She had a protector. And together, they would face whatever came next. The night was ending, but her journey was far from over. Because the wolf was not just her protector, it was her guide, her sentinel, and the living embodiment of the forest's ancient magic. And Elena understood, finally, that she had been chosen. The guardian wolf would ensure that she and her child survived. No matter what. The first rays of dawn filtered softly through the forest canopy, casting silver-gold light over the wet leaves and damp earth. The night had passed, leaving the forest serene and quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos that had raged just hours before. Elena stepped carefully along the muddy path, her body still trembling from exhaustion. Her belly, swollen with the life inside her, pressed against her arms as she moved slowly but steadily. She glanced behind her. The black wolf, her guardian, followed at a careful distance, its golden eyes ever watchful. For the first time since the night had begun, Elena allowed herself a small smile. She had survived. She was alive. And her child was safe. The forest, still dripping from the night storm, seemed almost magical now. Sunlight sparkled on the leaves and water droplets, and the fog that had blanketed the trees began to lift. Birds chirped softly, and the wind carried the fresh scent of pine and wet earth. But Elena knew the danger had not fully passed. The cruel man, though wounded and humiliated, was still alive. And somewhere in the depths of the forest, he might still be planning revenge. She had to reach the village. She had to get to safety. The wolf moved closer, nudging her gently as if to remind her that she was not alone. Its presence was comforting, powerful, and strangely calming. Elena realized then that the creature was more than a protector, it was a part of the forest itself, a living embodiment of the wilderness's ancient strength. As they walked, the wolf occasionally paused to sniff the air, its ears twitching. Elena followed its lead, trusting its instincts completely. She had no idea how far the village was, but the wolf seemed certain of the path. Hours passed, the forest gradually thinning as the path descended toward a valley. Eventually, the faint sound of running water reached her ears. A stream, she realized, and beyond it, smoke rising gently from chimneys. The village. Relief surged through her, and she quickened her pace slightly. The wolf stayed close, keeping pace with her stride, its eyes scanning the surrounding trees. It was a silent promise, nothing would harm her while it remained by her side. When Elena finally reached the edge of the village, a small figure appeared in the distance, her aunt, waiting at the edge of the fields. The older woman's face filled with worry and then relief as she ran toward Elena. "Elena, my child. You're safe," her aunt cried, pulling her into a warm embrace. Elena clutched her belly protectively, tears streaming down her face. "Thanks to someone," she whispered, glancing toward the trees. The wolf remained at the forest's edge, watching silently. It did not approach the villagers. It did not seek recognition or reward. It was a guardian, not a pet. Her aunt's eyes followed her gaze. What is that?" she asked softly. Elena shook her head. "A protector. A guardian. Something extraordinary." For a moment, the forest and the village seemed to hold their breath. Then the wolf's golden eyes met Elena's, and it gave a low, almost imperceptible bark. And then it turned, disappearing into the trees. Elena watched until it vanished completely. She knew she would never see it again, but she also knew it would always be near. Always watching, always guarding those who could not protect themselves. The villagers gathered cautiously, curious about the wet, muddy woman who had emerged from the forest with a story that none could yet believe. But Elena paid them little attention. She had survived the night. She had her life. She had her child. And she carried a secret that would remain with her forever, the knowledge that she had been protected by something ancient, powerful, and pure. Days passed. Elena recovered in her aunt's care, the memory of the night still vivid in her mind. Each time she closed her eyes, she could see the golden eyes of the wolf, the shimmer of the spirit-like apparition in the forest, and the cruel man's terrified expression as he fled into the darkness. She began to tell her child stories of the forest, of the night she was saved, and of the guardian who had watched over her. She spoke of courage, protection, and the unseen forces that sometimes guided those in need. Months later, when the baby was born, healthy and strong, Elena whispered a promise into the infant's ear. You are never alone. The forest watches. The guardian watches. And so shall I. The legend of the black wolf slowly spread through the surrounding villages. Farmers spoke of a massive black wolf seen patrolling the forests at night. Travelers told tales of a golden-eyed creature that protected the weak and punished those with cruel hearts. And in every telling, the story grew, not as a myth, but as a testament to courage, protection, and the bond between the human and the wild. Elena never saw the wolf again, but she never doubted its presence. When she walked near the forest, she felt its eyes on her, guarding from the shadows. She knew that if danger ever returned, she would not face it alone. Years passed. The child grew strong, learning to respect the forest, to respect the unseen guardians of the world. And Elena taught the lessons she had learned that night: bravery, compassion, and trust in those who protect without reward. And somewhere deep in the forest, the black wolf watched silently, waiting for the next soul in need of its protection. The night of terror, the storm, and the fight with the cruel man became a memory, but also a story. A story of survival, of an ancient protector, and of the bond between a human and the wild. And so, the legend endured. The guardian wolf, the protector of life and the punisher of cruelty, remained eternal, silent in the shadows, golden-eyed, and watching over all who walked the dark paths of the forest. Elena had survived. Her child had survived. And the guardian's watch would continue, as long as the forest stood.